My mother-in-law sat my 8-year-old daughter down at her kitchen table, looked her straight in the eyes, and told her that if she really loved this family, she would hand over her birthday camera to her cousin. And if she refused, well, then maybe she wasn't really part of this family at all. My daughter came home that night and started putting her most prized possession into a shoebox, not because she wanted to, because she believed she had to, because an adult she trusted told her that love comes with a price tag. And when my husband found out what his mother had done, he didn't yell, he didn't argue. He didn't do what he always did, which was smooth things over and pretend everything was fine. He picked up his phone at 1 in the morning and said 6 words to his parents that made the line go dead silent. 6 words that changed everything. And what happened after that? Well, it turned out his parents had been running a system for years, and my husband had just pulled the plug on the entire operation. But before I get into what those 6 words were and why his parents looked like they had seen a ghost, let me take you back to the beginning. Because this didn't start with a camera. This started a long time before that. And if you don't understand the history, you won't understand why what happened next hit so hard. Now, if you have ever dealt with family members who think your kindness is their credit card, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story is about to go places you will not see coming. And I promise you by the end of it, you will have a lot to say. Drop a comment right now telling me if you have ever had someone in your family guilt trip a child. I want to hear your stories because I know I am not the only one who has lived through something like this. All right, let me tell you about my husband, James. When I first met James, I thought he was the most patient man alive. He listened to everyone. He helped everyone. He never raised his voice. He was the kind of person who would drive 2 hours in the rain to help someone change a tire and then apologize for being 5 minutes late. I thought that was just who he was, a genuinely kind, calm, generous human being. And he is all of those things. But what I didn't understand until much later was that James wasn't patient because he was at peace. James was patient because he had been trained since childhood to believe that his only value was in what he could provide. His parents, Margaret and Don, had 2 children, James and his younger sister, Valerie, and from the very beginning, the family had a clear structure. Valerie was the one who needed things. James was the one who provided them. When James was 18, he wanted to go to college. His parents told him they couldn't afford to help him. They said money was tight. They said he was smart enough to figure it out on his own. They said they believed in him, which sounds like a compliment until you realize it was actually a policy. James worked through college, he took loans, he ate cheap food and lived in apartments with roommates who didn't believe in washing dishes. He graduated with a degree and a mountain of debt and not $1 of help from his parents. 2 years later, Valerie wanted to go to college. His parents paid for everything: tuition, housing, a car so she could get to class comfortably. When James asked about it, not angry, just confused, his mother said Valerie needs more support. She's sensitive, you understand. James said he understood, and he kept saying he understood for the next 15 years while the pattern repeated over and over again. When Valerie got married, his parents contributed generously. When James and I got married, his parents gave us a card with a check inside for an amount that was honestly insulting. Not because we needed their money, but because the gap between what they gave us and what they gave Valerie was a message. And the message was clear: you were second. When Valerie and her husband had their son Oliver, the entire family shifted. Oliver became the center of everything. Margaret talked about him like he was a historical event. Joan lit up whenever Oliver was mentioned. They spent holidays focused entirely on Oliver, bought him extravagant gifts, planned their schedules around his activities. Our daughter Lily was born 2 years after Oliver. And if Oliver was the sun, Lily was a small planet orbiting at the edge of the solar system, occasionally acknowledged when someone happened to look in her direction. Margaret could tell you Oliver's shoe size, his favorite food, and his teacher's name. She would ask us how Lily was doing and then change the subject before we finished answering. Don would talk about Oliver's Little League games for 20 minutes and then ask Lily if she was being good, which is the kind of question adults ask children they don't actually know. James saw it. I know he saw it because sometimes after family gatherings, he would get quiet in that particular way. Not angry quiet, processing quiet. The kind of quiet where someone is rearranging the furniture in their head, trying to make everything fit even though the room is obviously wrong. But he never said anything. He never confronted his parents. He never drew a line, because James had been taught his whole life that keeping the peace was more important than keeping his dignity. And then there was the money. James made good money. Not extraordinary money, but we were comfortable, stable. We could pay our bills, save a little, take a vacation now and then without panicking about the credit card statement afterward. And somewhere along the line, James started helping his parents financially. It started small, a bill here, a repair there, the kind of thing you do for family without thinking too much about it. But then it grew. James was sending his parents $700 a month, every month. He was paying for Oliver's after-school program, which was another 200. He was covering Valerie's phone bill because she said she couldn't afford it, which was another 150. He was sending Valerie money for groceries, another 300 a month. When I added it all up, James was quietly transferring over $1,300 a month to his family, more than $15,000 a year, for years. And here's the part that really got to me. They never thanked him. Not once. Not a card. Not a phone call. Not even a casual, "Hey, we really appreciate what you do." They treated it like oxygen, like it was just there. Like James existed to provide, and that was his function in the family machine. I tried to talk to James about it a few times. Gently, carefully. Because when you love someone who has been conditioned to give until they're empty, you can't just grab their hand and pull them out. You have to stand nearby and wait for them to realize they're drowning on their own. James always had an excuse. They need help. It's temporary. Valerie is going through a hard time. Mom and Dad are getting older. I can handle it. I can handle it. I can handle it became his motto, his shield, the sentence he used to avoid looking at the fact that his family treated him like a convenience and his daughter like a footnote. But through all of that, there was one thing I thought was safe. I thought they might ignore Lily. I thought they might overlook her. I thought they might favor Oliver in every visible way, but I did not think they would go directly to my child and try to take something from her using guilt and emotional threats. I was wrong about that. Let me tell you about the camera, because the camera is where this whole thing caught fire. Lily had been obsessed with photography for about a year. Not the way kids get obsessed with things for 2 weeks and then move on to something else. This was real. She would take my phone and spend hours framing shots of the backyard, the dog, her cereal bowl. She watched tutorials online. She talked about lighting and composition like she was studying for an exam. She had this eye for detail that honestly surprised us. James and I talked about it and decided that for her 8th birthday we would get her a real camera. Not a toy camera, a real one. A mirrorless camera that could actually do what she was trying to do. It cost about $1,400, which was a lot. We saved for it. We planned for it. It was not an impulse purchase. It was a deliberate investment in our daughter's passion. When Lily opened that camera on her birthday, her face went through about 7 emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, disbelief, a trembling lip, then this explosion of joy that made her look like she had just been told she could fly. She threw her arms around both of us and squeezed so hard I thought my ribs would crack. She spent the rest of that day taking pictures of everything. The cake, the balloons, the cat, a very confused mailman who happened to be walking by. But I noticed something during the party that I filed away and didn't think about until later. Oliver was watching, not with excitement. Not with that happy curiosity kids have when they see something cool. He was watching with his jaw tight and his eyes narrow, like something had been taken from him. And Valerie was watching too. Her smile went plastic the second Lily opened the box. She looked at the camera, then at Oliver, then at me. And I could see the calculation happening in real time. Margaret's reaction was even worse. She picked up the camera box, looked at the price, and set it down without saying anything. No congratulations. No, that's wonderful. Just a tight smile and a glance at Don that communicated an entire conversation without a single word. After the party, Valerie pulled me aside in the kitchen. She said it must be nice to afford things like that. She said Oliver had been wanting a camera too. She said it seemed unfair that Lily got something so expensive when Oliver didn't have anything like it. I told her as politely as I could that Lily's birthday was about Lily and that we had saved for months to buy that camera. Valerie shrugged and said, "Well, maybe next time think about how it looks to the rest of the family." I should have known that wasn't the end of it. That was just the beginning. The camera became a symbol, not of Lily's passion, not of our love for our daughter, but of something Margaret and Valerie decided they resented. And over the next few weeks, the comments started. Little remarks, little cuts. Oh, look at Miss Professional Photographer. Margaret would say when Lily had the camera out. Someone thinks she's special. Valerie would mutter to Oliver loud enough for Lily to hear. Don't worry, honey. Some people just like to show off. That one came from Margaret directly to Oliver right in front of Lily. I watched my daughter's excitement dim a little more each time, like someone was slowly turning down the brightness on her joy. She stopped bringing the camera to family events. She stopped talking about photography around them. She started keeping her passion private, hidden, like it was something to be ashamed of, and I kept telling myself it was manageable. Annoying, unfair, but manageable. Then came the weekend visit that changed everything. James took Lily to his parents' house for an overnight stay. It was supposed to be a fun grandparent weekend. Movies, cooking together, maybe some board games. Normal stuff. I stayed home because I had a work project due and honestly, I needed the quiet. James dropped Lily off and went to run some errands. He was gone for about 4 hours. When he came back to pick her up, something was different. He could tell the moment he walked in the door. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table with her hands in her lap and her shoulders up around her ears. Not crying, not dramatic, just small, just quiet, like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. James asked if she had a good time. Lily said yes without looking at him. He asked if she was ready to go. She nodded and grabbed her bag and walked to the car without saying goodbye to anyone. On the drive home, James asked if everything was okay. Lily said she was fine. She said she was just tired. James believed her because James always believed things were fine. That was his default setting. When they got home, I knew immediately something was wrong. Lily came through the door like she was walking through water. Slow, heavy, careful. She didn't say hello. She didn't tell me about her day. She walked straight to her room and closed the door with a soft click, not a slam, just a quiet goodbye to the rest of the house. I looked at James. James looked at me. He shrugged and said she was probably just tired. I made dinner. I knocked on Lily's door. She said she wasn't hungry. My daughter, who could eat 3 servings of pasta and still ask for bread, was not hungry. That told me everything I needed to know. After dinner, I knocked again and asked if I could come in. There was a long pause, then a small, yeah. I opened the door and found her sitting on her bed with her knees pulled up, staring at nothing. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes were damp, my heart twisted. I sat on the edge of her bed and asked what happened. She said nothing. I waited. I didn't push. I just sat there with her in the silence. Then she started crying. Quietly. Like she was trying to be invisible, even in her own bedroom. I put my arm around her and she leaned into me so fast it was clear she had been holding herself together on willpower alone. I asked her again very gently if something happened at Grandma's house. She nodded. I asked what happened, and this is where my blood went cold. Lily told me that Margaret sat her down at the kitchen table while James was gone. Don was there too, standing by the counter, not saying anything but not stopping anything either. Margaret told Lily that it wasn't fair that she had such an expensive camera when Oliver didn't have one. She told Lily that a good granddaughter would share. She told Lily that Oliver had been asking for a camera for months, and his parents couldn't afford one, and it was making everyone sad. Then Margaret told Lily that she should give her camera to Oliver as a gift, not share it. Give it. Permanently. And when Lily hesitated, when her 8-year-old brain tried to process the idea of handing over the thing she loved most in the world, Margaret said something that I will never forgive as long as I live. She told Lily that if she refused, she shouldn't bother calling her grandma anymore. She said if Lily couldn't do this one simple thing for family, then maybe she wasn't really part of this family after all. My 8-year-old daughter looked at me with tears running down her face and asked me if she was a bad person for not wanting to give it away. She asked me if grandma was right. She asked me if love meant giving up the things that make you happy. I held her and I told her no. I told her she was kind and generous and good, and that no one had the right to make her feel guilty for having something she loved. I told her that love is not a transaction, and family is not a toll booth. And then I went to find my husband. James was in the living room. I told him everything Lily had said. I told him word for word what his mother had done. I watched his face change as I spoke. I watched the color drain out of it. I watched his jaw tighten. I watched his hands ball into fists at his sides, and for the first time in all the years I'd known him, I watched the peacekeeper disappear. James stood up. He walked to the bedroom. He came back with his phone. It was after midnight. The house was dark and quiet. Our daughter was in her room, probably wondering if she had done something wrong by existing. James called his parents on video because he wanted to see their faces, because he wanted them to see his, because he was done having conversations that could be rewritten later. Margaret answered, looking irritated and confused. Don squinted at the screen behind her. They asked why he was calling so late. They asked if something was wrong. James did not ease into it. He did not build up to it. He looked at his mother through the screen and said, "Did you tell Lily she can't call you Grandma if she doesn't give Oliver her camera?" Margaret didn't deny it. That was the shocking part. She didn't even hesitate. She said yes like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. She said the camera was too expensive for a child. She said Oliver deserved one too. She said it wasn't fair. She said a good granddaughter would understand. James stared at her. And then he said the 6 words that made the line go silent. "You are no longer her grandparents." Margaret's face went white. Don's mouth fell open. For 5 full seconds, nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. The screen just hung there with 2 people staring at it like their son had just set the house on fire. Margaret tried to recover. She started talking fast. She said James was overreacting. She said she was just trying to teach Lily about sharing. She said this was being blown out of proportion. James cut her off. He said, "You threatened my child with conditional love to get a $1,400 camera for someone else's kid." He said you used her fear of losing you as leverage. He said you made an 8-year-old believe she was a bad person for owning something she loves. Margaret started crying. She said she didn't mean it like that. She said James was twisting her words. James said her words were perfectly clear to an 8-year-old, and that was all that mattered. Then he told them that every payment stops immediately. He listed them one by one. 700 a month to them, 300 a month to Valerie, 200 for Oliver's activities, 150 for the phone plan, all of it. Done. Margaret's tears dried up remarkably fast when the money was mentioned. She said James couldn't do that. She said they depended on that help. She said it was cruel to cut them off. James said it was cruel to make a child cry so you could redistribute her birthday presents. Then he ended the call. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't soften it. He just hung up. He sat there for a moment, staring at his phone. Then he looked at me and said something I'd waited years to hear. He said, "I'm done being their wallet." He said, "I'm done being their safety net while they treat my daughter like she doesn't matter." I took his hand and held it, and we sat there together in the dark while the house settled around us. The aftermath came fast. By the next morning, Valerie had posted a long emotional essay online about how James had abandoned his family right before Oliver's birthday party. She painted herself as the struggling single mother whose selfish brother had cut them off without warning. She mentioned Lily by name. She said Lily had refused to share with her cousin and that we were raising her to be spoiled and entitled. She mentioned the camera. She did not mention that Margaret had threatened an 8-year-old with the loss of her grandmother's love. Margaret commented underneath the post, saying she was heartbroken. Don wrote something about being abandoned by his own son. Relatives started chiming in with sad faces and sympathy. A cousin called me privately and told me what actually happened at Oliver's birthday party. Oliver had expected the camera to show up as a gift. When it didn't, he had a complete meltdown, screaming, crying, demanding his parents buy him one right now. The party was a disaster and it had nothing to do with us. James read the post. He read the comments. He watched his years of sacrifice being erased with one paragraph. Then he did something I had never seen him do before. He responded publicly. He wrote the truth, calmly, factually, without emotion. He explained what Margaret had said to Lily. He explained the threat about the grandmother title. He explained that Lily had been so upset she came home in tears. Then he listed the payments. Every single one. The amounts. The duration. The total. Years of money flowing in one direction while respect flowed in none. He ended with 4 words. "I have the receipts." The comment section changed. Not immediately and not completely, but noticeably. People started asking questions. People started doing math. People started realizing that the struggling family had been propped up by the brother they were now publicly shaming. Valerie stopped responding. Margaret and Don went quiet, and for the first time in years, the silence felt like relief instead of tension. 3 weeks later, Margaret and Don showed up at our door. Valerie was behind them, looking uncomfortable. Margaret was holding a pie like it was a diplomatic offering. She said they wanted to move forward. She said they understood now. She said they were sorry. James listened. Then he said no. Not no to reconciliation, no to going backwards. No to pretending. He told them that if they wanted to see Lily, it would be on his terms, supervised visits only. No private conversations with Lily, no guilt, no manipulation, no manipulation, no requests for money, no comments about the camera, no comparisons with Oliver. And if they broke any of those rules even once, they would not see Lily again. Margaret looked at him like she didn't recognize him. Don looked stunned. Valerie looked furious. Margaret said he had changed. James nodded and said, "Yes, I have." They left without the pie. That was 6 months ago. Our life looks completely different now. Not because we moved or won the lottery, because we stopped funding other people's comfort at the expense of our own family. Without those monthly payments draining our account, we could breathe. We took Lily on a weekend trip she'd been asking about. We signed her up for a photography class she had been wanting. We spent Saturday mornings together doing nothing important, and it felt like everything. Lily is different now. Lighter. She brings her camera everywhere again. She doesn't hide it. She doesn't apologize for having it. She takes pictures of sunsets and flowers and the dog sleeping in weird positions, and she shows them to us with pride instead of shame. James is different too. He stands taller. He sleeps better. He stopped apologizing for things that aren't his fault. He stopped carrying his parents' financial burdens on his back like it was his job. He learned something I don't think he fully understood before, that his value as a person is not measured in bank transfers. Margaret and Don see Lily every other week now, supervised, short visits. And the strange thing is, Lily actually enjoys them more because she's not afraid anymore. She knows we're right there. She knows nobody is going to corner her in a kitchen and tell her she has to earn the right to be loved. And Margaret has not mentioned the camera once. I think about that night a lot. The night Lily was sitting in her room trying to put her camera in a shoebox because her grandmother told her that love costs $1,400, I think about what would have happened if James had done what he always did. If he had smoothed it over. If he had explained it away. If he had told Lily that Grandma didn't mean it. If he had kept the peace one more time. I think Lily would have learned something terrible that night. She would have learned that her feelings don't matter as much as other people's comfort. She would have learned that family means giving up the things that make you who you are. She would have learned that love is conditional and the price goes up every time. Instead, she learned something else. She learned that her parents will fight for her. She learned that boundaries are not mean. She learned that saying no to someone who is hurting you is not selfish. It is survival. And James learned something too. He learned that the wall he had been holding up for his entire life, the wall of patience and sacrifice and being the responsible one, that wall was never protecting him. It was protecting the people who were using him. And when he finally put it down, the only thing that fell was the lie that he owed them his silence. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, you are my kind of people. Leave a comment below saying, "Protect the kids," so I know you stuck around for the whole thing. And if you have ever had to draw a line with family members who thought your generosity was their entitlement, tell me about it. I read every single comment, and your stories remind me that none of us are going through this alone. And before you leave, go watch another video on this channel. There is one about a grandmother who found her granddaughter living in a shelter while her parents collected rent on the house that was supposed to be hers. And there is another one about a mother whose son-in-law demanded her home of 43 years. Real stories, real consequences, real people who decided they were done being walked over. Click on one of those right now while it is fresh in your mind. And remember this, you do not owe your peace to people who mistake your kindness for weakness. Thanks for listening.